funny enough, it was actually Noah who was among the first people to interview me for the project. He was actually attached to the movie first.
I see. Okay.
Before I was. But the same question still applies. Do I feel that Noah would have what it takes to do it? And in our early conversations, I knew right away that he would.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Off the Shelf. Today, I am sitting down with a Toronto-based feature film and TV director, a photographer, and one of the brilliant minds, the director behind the Sidelined movies, Justin Wu. Welcome to Off the Shelf.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have created some incredible things, incredible movies, but if you could erase one movie, any movie from your brain and watch it again for the first time, which one would it be?
I'd have to say 10 Things I Hate About You. I would love to rewatch that fresh. And I mean, it's one of those movies where I'm happy to watch it again and again and again. But, that first time watching it was fun, refreshing. And it's actually why I wanted to get into rom-coms to kind of start with. Yeah.
That is like our OG, like enemies to lovers. I love that rom-com. I love the soundtrack and everything.
Everything about it.
It's incredible. Now let's get into some things.
Sure.
You have a really cool backstory. You have studied biology and business and you worked nights at a camera shop, but you've always been drawn to the arts. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about like booking that one-way ticket to Paris and making the decision to finally go for it.
Well, first, I'm extremely impressed that you were able to kind of dig all this information up. So, yeah, I'd say that the arts was already very much in my blood. My mother was a fine art painter. My father conducted a choir. And although that was not their formal professions, I was very immersed in the art world growing up. That said, one of the sad also truths about why I was also attracted to the arts was growing up, I had a kind of a challenge. I was grown up, with Chinese immigrant parents while being born and raised in Canada to very Western values. And I find that this kind of disconnect between the values I have at home to the values that I was brought up at school was where I was seeking identity. I was trying to understand my place in society, place in life. And what I realized was that watching a lot of movies and TV shows, I found my calling there because I was able to understand and relate to those particular stories and pick and choose what values that they aspire to. And so I found that the power of art at a young age was being able to help understand yourself and then, of course, understand others. So despite this kind of crazy story of me going to the sciences, pursuing what my parents wanted me to pursue, I've always had a fascination with the arts and its ability to connect with people.
So why did you end up in Paris in your last year of university?
Right.
What happened there?
So, to kind of backtrack the story a bit, when I went into university, I was there for biology, as you discovered. I actually was gifted my father's camera, and it's 35 millimeter Pentax camera, and I fell in love with the medium. I dabbled in drawing, painting, sculpting, and none of it really resonated with me. It's just not my art form. I can appreciate it. But what really attracted me to photography was the fact that I was able to tell the story I wanted to tell in a frame that's reality, right? Because yes, there are different tools we can manipulate reality, but within reason, when you capture that one frame, especially if you're dealing with people, that's a real person in front of you in a moment in time. And so I just really love photography so much, and I dabbled in different forms. Started in photojournalism while I was at Queen's University, and realized that I didn't want to capture someone else's story. I wanted to tell my own story. So as opposed to capturing a live event of something that's going on, I wanted to control the narrative, control the subject, control the setting and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And being a student of cinema, watching so many TV shows and movies, it was sort of the closest I could get to film and TV, I thought, and which is what I always wanted to pursue. And so after I graduated from Queen's, I moved to Western and studied business and trying to understand how I can make photography into a business. I realized that through business school, looking at all the forms of photography, the one area of photography that celebrates storytelling is fashion. Because a lot of the times when you look at, these magazines or you look at these ads, yes, it's about the clothing, but it's the philosophy behind it. A lot about fashion photography is really about creating a fantasy. It's about creating a world in which you want to inhabit. And as a result, you actually create log lines, you write characters, even in France, they call it costume design. They call it costumes because the way they see it is that, especially in photography, the clothing has to match the character that you want to create. So the quick answer to my long story about why Paris is because that's the epicenter of fashion. And at that time when I was starting out, it's not as if there were many opportunities in Toronto. And even in New York, it was very commercial. And at the time it was very challenging to go from, let's just say I were to make it. There were very few examples of how American photographers would make it in Europe. But there are many examples of how European photographers can make it in America. So I thought if I want to take a chance, I was going to just book a one-way ticket to Paris and give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, I can always come back to Toronto. But if it ended working out, I'd stay there. So, and that's what ended up happening.
Did you, when you took this chance and you took that leap, did you ever have any moments of like, what the hell did I just do? And like, how were you able to push onwards?
Well, yeah, there are many instances like that. I think there are many anecdotes of how I didn't even know French that well. I, of course, being Canadian, we learned French at a very, very rudimentary level. Yeah. I mean, beyond the conjugations I have and I am and you are, it's like, I can't converse in French. So there were many instances where when I was there, I didn't know the language very well. I was thrown into this brand new world as a classic fish out of water story. And it was unnerving. I just didn't know how I navigate. And there were many times, of course, I thought about turning back. But I thought for me to take a chance, I've already done the one-way ticket. I should take it seriously. And so I just thought, this is my one shot. And if I didn't do it, I'd miss out this opportunity of a lifetime. And of course, I'm glad I did.
Where do you think you would be if you didn't go to Paris? I am going to pull some more backstory from you, but in one of your last agency appointments, you asked the agent, what could I do better? And he took a chance on you because he liked that determination. But if you didn't ask that question and he didn't take that chance on you, where do you think you would be right now?
That's a very personal anecdote and one that I'm really proud to share. It's because I don't know. I think I was already in my last attempt. So for everyone out there who's not aware, when I was in Paris, I had tried to work with different agencies, shoot for different magazines, and everyone said no. And that was because they saw my work as being too commercial or not European enough, not having enough depth, and I was just a budding photographer at the time. I never studied photography whatsoever. It was all thanks to early YouTube University and working in a camera store. So the real answer to that question is I probably would have given up. I think that was the last agency I had met. And the very unfortunate anecdote is that, which turns into a positive, is this agent, as I soon discovered later on, it was actually meant to be as a character test, took my portfolio and actually threw it in the trash. I mean, how rude is that, right? Just imagine you printed out your portfolio, you present it, it's bound and everything, it's you're proud of your work, and they flip through it. He chuckles, passes it around to all the other agents. They also scoff at it. He just takes it and tosses it into the trash and said, that's it. I had to go and grovel and pick it up from the trash, say thank you, and I just posed that one question of like, well, why is it trash? Why? How could I do better? And he was so surprised by that answer that he eventually became my mentor. But had he said no and just, ushered me out the door, I think I would have just called it quits. Really.
That's in the throwing. I couldn't even imagine like you as a director doing that to a script.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that just doesn't happen like that.
It doesn't happen. It was really dramatic. And you're like, oh, no, there's no way someone would be that rude and that mean. But no, he told me like months after that many photographers walk through the doors. Many artists walk through hoping to have their shot. And he really wanted to see whether I'd have the toughness and the resilience to actually make it through this industry. It's very critical. Like any art, you think your work is best, but it has to be interpreted. It has to be translated and felt. And if you don't feel it, you don't feel it, right? So he really wanted to see whether I had the chops on a personal level to be able to withstand the criticism and evolve. And when he saw the potential to learn and grow, he said, I'm going to give this guy a chance.
Huh. And then how did you go from photography to directing?
Well, then that involves going back way further
Okay,
in
take me
time.
back.
So when I was around 10, I believe, I was introduced to a movie I shouldn't have been allowed to watch at that age.
Which
is Jurassic Park. I was underage at the time, and my cousin said, there's this movie we should all watch together in the basement while our parents are playing like mahjong upstairs or something. And it just floored me. I did not realize that a movie could transport you that far and could tell a story that compelling. And it completely opened my eyes to the possibility that I want to be the person who did that, who created that world. Not only was it a very fun adventure that can be appreciated by all ages, but it just piqued my interest and it inspired me. And so from that age, I'd always been very curious about film and wanted to kind of get into film. And so by high school, heading to university, just the fact that my parents gifted me a camera, that was the inception. I thought that'd be where I'd be satisfied with, because the unfortunate reality of also at the time is even if you wanted to tell your high school counselor or I don't know, your college guide or professor, I want to get into film and TV, they themselves wouldn't even know how to break in, because the industry was budding in Canada. I mean, it's thriving now, but at the time, there weren't many training programs. There were a lot of film schools and film studies program, but very few that would give you the training and the know-how or tell you how to get into the industry. So I really thought at the time photography was going to be the end all be all, and I'd be happy with it. But that said, many years later, video production, technology became much more accessible. And so the top of the line photography camera that I had, which is a Canon 5D Mark I, had HD video. And that also happened to be the time when YouTube really exploded. So had a lot of the convergence of these things happen, accessibility of technology, a free platform where you can share your work and learn from a community, I absolutely would not have attempted it. Maybe many years I tried in different ways, but I'm glad that all these things happened and it gave me the opportunity, and I seized the opportunity when it came.
Now I'm gonna ask you to take us back to the beginning one more time. How did Sidelined, the QB and Me end up on your desk, and why was this a project you wanted to take on?
It really requires a lot of backstory. So as I mentioned, I love photography and I love the arts. One art in particular that I love is actually dance. I am not a dancer. I'm like rhythmically challenged.
Same.
But I mean, I love to dance on the dance floor. I mean, like anyone, it's fun.
It's freeing.
Yeah. But there's something about how in photography, when I had that first chance occurrence to shoot a dancer, I'd realized how powerful and evocative their emotion and body language can convey an emotion. One of the areas of photography I shoot often and actually hung up in my apartment is a lot of dancers, or a lot of dancers, because they can, again, evoke so much. So years later, after photography, I did some video production work, eventually directed TV commercials, music videos, the whole lot, short films, and then got into TV shows. Just then, the book and the script landed on my desk. And it perfectly synthesizes all the things I love. And when, I read the script, when I read the book, I was just so surprised by the level of maturity the characters have. You know, a lot of the codes of rom-coms have, the meet cute and whatnot. But here, I just love the level of depth that these two individuals, set in high school, of course, um, are bonding over this idea that they have unresolved trauma. Um, they are dealing with grief in their own way. Dallas's character, of course, is an orphan and, is trying to navigate life without parents, being raised by her brother. And simultaneously, you have Drayden's character that is, of course, is dealing with the loss of Abby. Very traumatic in the book that we had to modify for the movie. But nonetheless, it was just a beautiful way for two people to fall in love and get to know each other. And so there's also dance. There's also football. There is action. There is delight and surprise. And, another great film that I loved growing up was Save the Last Dance. So when I read the script, a lot of those scenes popped into my mind. I could just see and visualize how I would interpret it. And so of all the stories that came on my desk, that was the one that stood out, and I thought, that's what I want to do.
Now, you as a director, do you read the book first or do you read the script first? And is there a beneficial way where to start?
More often than not, just the way that the business operates, as a director, they give you the script first, because that's the thing they want to translate into a movie. But, what I also find that's very important in today's world is that book adaptations are very challenging because a lot of the techniques that authors use in writing a novel doesn't translate on screen. A lot of the inner monologues, for instance, can be done by a voiceover, but oftentimes we love the adage of showing, not telling, to allow audience to discover and experience it without having been told by a voice. Or some of the challenges of, like, say, a big set piece just is not financially possible, or we just cannot create it, gives us a lot of freedom to try and adapt that version of it, but stay true to the original source material. So I find that whenever there's an adaptation involved, read the script, first fall in love with it, see where there are opportunities for improvement as a director of, like, oh, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? But always falling back to the book. What is the book about? What are the central themes? Who are the characters? And for me, it was really important to interact with Tay, the original author of the book, because I think understanding who the characters that she wanted to evoke, or what are their aspirations, their dreams, insecurities, helps me as a director shape the characters we see on screen. Because not all the scenes in the book we can translate. So, but that said, are the challenges authentic? Is the way that they would handle themselves true to the character? And that, to me, was the critical and essential to making a great adaptation. So to answer your question succinctly, it's always script first, book second, and it's a constant interplay between the two. It's always like, I'd had the book as a manual next to me at all times. Yeah.
Now, you are the director of both these movies, but can you tell us, like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does it mean to be a director? Where are you calling the shots on?
So that actually changes from movie to movie and project to project. And I'm so proud to say that Sidelined was my first movie ever. I had done TV before, and again, Sidelined was the movie I wanted to do as my first film. So that presents a lot of opportunities and challenges too. For the first movie, as a director, you are there, of course, always in service to the producers and to the source material. And there, it was my job to look at everything from the casting to the wardrobe to the sets, select locations, work with the actors, rehearse with them, find the language, work with the writer to really figure out what the story is about. And then when it comes to being on set, it's about putting it all together, directing everyone, the crew, the cast, to have these scenes come to life on screen from the monitor. And directors are the ones that call action and cut, and are very involved in every aspect of the film, from the selection of music to the edit. And then, of course, my favorite part is the release of the movie, when you can feel and hear how audiences react to the finished product. So that's Sidelined 1. Yeah. Sidelined 2, because we are now going away from the books, and it was a decision that we could chart a new path based off the incredible characters that Tay created. I'd even more freedom, because now we're no longer tied to the source material. We can now ask the question, even asked with the producers and the writer and the actors, where do you think the characters could go next? Where would you want the characters to go? So it's a much more in-depth process this time. And they made me an EP, an executive producer, this time, to allow for a little more creative freedom to shape where the story should go and end up. So I'd say from project to project, directors have different levels of control. But through it all, I have to say that this production has been really the dream production to be part of, because I was able to kind of dabble and have input in everything that you see on screen.
So Sideline was your first movie. Do you remember the first time you said action, and do you remember what scene it was?
I do, actually. Okay. And to this day, it actually is the wallpaper of my phone.
No
way.
Cell phone. Okay, what scene is it? Which one?
I know exactly, because it's a rarity in the industry. It's scene 1, shot 1, which is changed in the movie, but the first scene was Dallas performing in her dance studio with Miss Alicia and making mistakes. And so that was the actual first scene and first shot when I called action. And that will forever have a very special place in my heart.
Well, especially because now that you've mentioned like dance played such a big part in photography, what was it like to work with Siena and like the athletic choreography that came with her character?
It was a dream. Siena is a phenomenal actor. She is so hardworking, comes with a lot of experience. She's kind of a child star. And a big part of it was to also be able to listen and learn. And I listened to her instincts. I was able to also work with our superstar choreographer, Jeffrey Mortensen, and really try to understand where we want the character to be, how they should feel, and what do we want to express. And working with her was just magical, because she gives very good notes. She gives very good feedback. She also listens really well and can translate almost anything I suggest to her. And we just have this great dialogue and a level of connection that really made the whole process so special. And so I really couldn't have done it without her. And I think she's our best number one.
This was Noah Beck's first big role. What made you confident that he could carry this role, coming from a background like TikTok and not acting?
Funny enough, it was actually Noah who was among the first people to interview me for the project. He was actually attached to the movie first.
I see. Okay.
Before I was. But the same question still applies. You know, do I feel that Noah would have what it takes to do it? And in our early conversations, I knew right away that he would. And the reason is because, fortunately, in my career, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of non-actors as well as very seasoned actors. And the one characteristic I'm always looking forward to seeing is whether they have the determination, whether they have the passion and the discipline to actually do what it takes to create the best work. Mm-hmm. And in our discussions over Zoom at the time, I really felt it in him. He was so dedicated to acting. He really wanted to pursue it for a while. And when I heard what the level of commitment he had and the steps he was going to take, I was convinced he was going to be a great fit. Of course, it's not just, your dedication and commitment, but also whether I felt he could connect with the character. So a lot of the dialogue that we had was about, what do you relate to Drayton? What about your personal life can you pull from and add to the character? And the fact that Noah, could have gone pro playing soccer, was a very powerful parallel to Drayton's journey, wanting to become a star football player. So I knew that he had and understood the pressures from family, the pressures from his team to succeed, the challenges to become a leader, and finding first love. We've all been there, and hearing him talk about his experiences, I really felt that he had a lot to offer the role, and he did.
And he did. I remember I had the opportunity to be on set for one of those days. And you never, like, someone with a social media background, like, sometimes it happened, like, for me, it happened by accident. People were coming from all over. But I remember being on set for even just like a couple of hours and seeing him act. And I was like, I get it now. Like, people are going to understand that, like, people, even if they're from TikTok, they have a talent for these kind of things. And I remember we were shooting like a scene inside the house, and it was just you and Noah talking, or like you guys were talking in the garage, and you both were just like on the same page, but you were both so open to like what the other one was saying. And Siena and Noah, they crushed it, and everyone is going to love the second movie. I don't know where I was going with that. That was my whole long tangent of just
thank you so much.
The set visit was incredible. It was lovely to meet you and all of the producers. You as a director, like, you had read the script and you had read the book. Was there any like non-negotiables for you about like how you wanted this film to come across to an audience, like visually or tonally or anything like that?
That's hard to say. I don't think there's any one non-negotiable. I think I'm really pleasantly surprised and just empowered that I was given a lot of freedom to present my case for everything, from the color choices to the wardrobe and the way scenes would be expressed. I think everything's always done in collaboration. You have to pitch it to the producers, pitch it to the actors, listen to the producers, listen to the actors, listen to all the heads of departments. And no, there wasn't one particular thing. I think maybe I wanted to reinforce the importance of the dance, reinforce the importance of football. I think that oftentimes a dance sequence in a movie can be a very fun scene to do, but I can imagine how sometimes producers may be a bit more hesitant. Like, does it have to be that long? Or could we try this, or could we try that? But I was very adamant, and they also felt the same way too, that there's so much that could be expressed that does not need to have scenes of dialogue in its place. The way that Siena is able to, show how she's feeling in that one instance at that part of the movie through her performance, said so much. So no, there's not one thing, and I know that's not always the case with some directors in some movies.
Well, I think you guys just had a great team all working on this. Was there any scenes that were like challenging for you to film in that first movie?
One of the biggest challenges of any movie is always time and budget. And I think one of the most difficult things, as always, are big sport sequences. And that's because there's only so much budget to have extras, and every time you see a person on screen, we probably have to feed them, right? Clothe them. A lot of the challenges also comes with opportunities. Like when I knew, this is the budget that we had for the scene. We can choose between this stadium or that stadium. A lot of it was balancing what the stadium or the scene could offer, and more importantly, what do I need as a director for audiences to experience. And I think that compromise, that choice is critical. And so obviously it's sort of like a dial or a scale. You're like, well, you want this toy, you want the crane, then you have less extras. You want more extras to make it feel bigger, then you lose some of the toys or time. So I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, to make and make it feel like a convincing game. But, having watched so many football movies in the past and sports films and dance movies, I sort of am a very big avid storyboarder. And the reason being, this also allows everyone, including especially your crew and your producers, to see and feel how you imagine the scenes to play out and why I need those different elements. And so it was a challenge. I knew there were very, very late nights. I almost went into like the middle of the night.
I was going to say, I vaguely remember someone talking about an overnight football shoot scene.
It was fortunately not overnight, but it was late. Very late. Ooh. Very, very late. Because we had to film those, like that beautiful montage with all the kinetic energy of them losing, them winning, and the crowds cheering and booing, and then all done in one in one sitting. And people always think like, oh, well, don't you just have multiple cameras going? And it's true, we do have multiple cameras going. But oftentimes when you actually watch and you count every angle that's being used, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of shots.
Yeah. And I think being on set that first time, I was like, this is why it takes so long to film a movie.
It takes that long. It's also movie magic. Like, you're thinking sometimes when you see, a close-up of someone's face, the camera must be right in front of them. And then when you see a wide shot of the entire room, like, where's the camera? We had to shoot every angle individually. And then piece it together. And it all has to fit cohesively to the point where you don't even realize that there were multiple cameras and it was shot at different times.
Are you drawing out kind of how you want the scenes to look?
I, again, did sketch and draw as a kid, but, I did draw every frame. Every single frame I drew. I have this method of doing very simple potato heads and stick figures, which again may seem silly, but it just works. It shows where the characters are, how close I want the frame, and what elements, if there's a prop that really needs to be in the scene, or a detail in the background, I make sure it's all in my little doodles.
When you were story blocking that first movie, was there any like certain camera angles or scenes that you felt like needed to be in that first movie? Like, was that things we were considering?
Absolutely. So camera angles and lens choices can completely change how you feel about an environment. So for a good example is the dance studio. Mm-hmm. The dance studio appears in the first film multiple times in different stages of her journey. And for many people who don't realize, we almost never shoot the movie in order.
Yes.
So, fun fact is that we spent only 2 days filming everything in Miss Alicia's dance studio. All the scenes in the entire movie was shot in 2 days. And that was the first scene,
right?
As well as one of the very last scenes. I thought it was a very powerful tool to use the dance studio as an anchor, so that as the movie progresses, you can always come back to the dance studio to see and feel how Dallas is feeling at the time.
Right.
Whether she's madly in love, whether she's dealing with a challenge and friction with Drayton, whether she is struggling to do that pirouette. And then finally at the very end, when she has a breakup, dealing with her loss, and the elation of her coming back into the room. So we have to find different ways to shoot the same space. Sometimes we change the lighting. Sometimes we change the color. But one thing that I was very dead set on is the use of a very high angle wide shot in selective and specific points in the story. In the beginning of the movie, when we see her in the dance studio, she's in it, she's killing it, and so we're with her down low because we were connected to her. But later on, when she's isolated, her best friend Gabby, they had a little bit of a row, if you were, as it were, and she walks out of the dance studio. I wanted to make sure that we felt, that Dallas felt, super isolated and alone. So that really high angle top shot expressed that she's completely by herself.
At what point during or after the release of this first movie did the conversation start about a sequel?
It's a difficult question to answer because, of course, deep down, like any director, we always hope the story lives on, and you spent so much time and effort creating these beautiful characters that you are with. I mean, more than most, I'm literally living and breathing with these actors that have to embody these characters. So we're always constantly discussing over dinner, in the hotel room, in between set, and and also in the editing room. And of course, when you put all this effort in, you wish there's a second life, and you always leave some crumbs for audiences to kind of imagine. And sometimes it's with the intent of creating a sequel. Sometimes it's also simply with the intent to allow and pique audiences so that they can imagine where the characters can go. And that itself can be a beautiful resolution. So I'd say maybe, I don't know, midway through filming, when we were feeling it, we were like, I think this is going to work. I think this is going to be a hit. Was when, just for fun, we were discussing like, oh, well, what if there was a part 2? What would happen in part 2? We didn't really act on it. We just did the best job we could because, again, for my first movie, there was no plans genuinely for a second movie. I don't think the studio did either, but of course everyone hoped it. And so by the release, on the first week, and we broke records.
Right. Well, it hit number 1 on Tubi on Canada and US. Insane.
And we were also charting globally. The Variety like top 5 most streamed movies that week, global. And by the way, to pat ourselves on the back, another fact is that it was only released in North America, and we were competing against movies on Netflix and on Amazon and on Disney that were distributed globally. So we were in the top 5 just from the numbers in North America alone, which of course we were just over the moon. I mean, I had always hoped that would be the case. You never know. I do my best job and hope that all you can connect with the story. And yeah, we did it. And so really within the first week, I knew the conversation was going to happen. And over the holidays, over the Christmas holiday was when ideas were brewing. And by January, it was confirmed the studio is moving ahead with a second movie. And we're going to head into production right away. And proud to say that's coming out very soon.
Yeah, that's insane. Now, with no source material for this movie, how did you guys decide where you wanted the film to go? And can you give us a synopsis, a rundown of like what we can expect in the new movie?
Well, I think what was important for me was taking it as different chapters in life. Every movie can only feature so much. You're not featuring every minute of someone's life. You're featuring selected bits, and movies have to also express a certain theme. Be very concise about it too. You don't want to waste their time. So in the first movie, I knew it was about identity. It was about finding love. And there comes with also acceptance about oneself. These were the main themes that we want to deal with in the first movie. And it's also in high school. Knowing the setting is really key. The decisions in high school are about what college you want to go to, not necessarily about what life you want to have. The college, and I find that college is really where you discover yourself, what you really want to do in life, and who you want to become is the second question. And I think that became my main focus, is posing those questions. And having done photojournalism and journalism in the past, I love asking the questions. And so one big question I had asked to our actors is, where do you think your characters would want to go, and what are the challenges you think your characters would face when they're in college? And this is where we pulled all our ideas. I brought my own college experience of like remembering there are so many different courses you're taking, you're meeting so many new friends who have different backgrounds, and they're inspiring you to do something completely different from what you had imagined. And so I would say that Sidelined 2 really is about that exploration. It's about them navigating who they really want to be, who they really are, and what are their priorities. The movie begins and picks up right after where the first movie ends. They're in college. Dallas is at Cal Arts, the school of her dreams. Drayton is at USC, his choice. But now it's about all the curveballs that come with college life. He may no longer be number one on the football team. He has to fight for that role because he may have taken it for granted when he was at Archwood, but now he's at a bigger college with really fantastic football players. And so he has to deal with that along with the parental pressure, and same with Dallas. So it's really navigating college life and trying to figure out where do each of them where do they fit in each other's lives. And I think it's a very beautiful story.
It really is. I felt like it was such, you talking about figuring out life in university or college, as they say in the States, is so true. Like high school, you're like, okay, like what prerequisites do I need to take to go on with my life? And college and university is like, okay, like what do I do with my life now? And we see them struggle with that, as a lot of people do. As a director on the first movie, now the second movie, was there anything you wanted to like consciously bring with you from that first film into the second one? And is there anything you wanted to like change or evolve or like leave behind in that first one?
A lot of both, actually. So in the first, I remember when I was preparing for the second movie, I had to rewatch the first movie and fall in love with my characters all over again. And not just to pat ourselves on the back, but to also listen. And I think a big part of it is understanding what made it a success and reading the comments on TikTok. So thank you all of you out there. Really, we would not be here had it not been all of you who made this happen, and your fandom, your viewership, and dedication and love for our film is why we have a second film, why we're granted the opportunity. So a lot of it was for me to learn, what made you fall in love with these characters? What was it about it? And I discovered, and rightly assumed, that it was because of the optimism, the groundedness. These are relatable characters that are aspirational. They're very relatable, very normal, as it were, dealing with different life challenges, but extremely universal themes. And I wanted those to carry over. So that grounded approach, yes, there are funny bits. Yes, there's humor and lighthearted moments, but it will never take away from the fact that all these scenes are dealing with real people, or as best possible. So I think that's one thing I carried over. However, that said, I think it was really important when I was deep in discussions with Noah and Siena, that college life is so different. We can all remember those years. Siena herself is actually in college right now, and asking her, how do you feel moving from high school to college? Admittedly, she's lived on set for many, many years, but she's also very observant. She's a very empathetic individual, and so a lot of it is being observant to what those behaviors are like, and asking ourselves, how would these characters become more mature? And that was really a big crux of it, is that I wanted that these characters to be familiar, but also show a different side of them, this new level of maturity, as opposing different questions in life. What do I want for me? And what would I want for my partner?
Right. Can you give me an example from the second movie where there was a choice to like give them more of a mature vibe?
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's one particular moment. I think it really has to be across the entire board. So the way that they are, the way that they message each other, the way that they talk to each other, also a level of understanding. It's like at this point in life, it's their first true love, and the level of patience and understanding. I think it's really important to kind of reflect that. And so it's not catty. It's really two mature adults that are trying to make very difficult life decisions, and really having them react as if they were adults in college. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's one particular instance, but really about that feeling being carried throughout.
Now I have to ask this.
Yes.
Is there any talks about a third movie? Because I've seen the movie and I know how it ends, but third movie?
Yes. Well,
Really?
I mean, put it this way. I, as a director, when I was shaping the story, you know, all of you book lovers out there, you know, you're aware of different acts, right? You have the first act, you have the second act, and the third act.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one big part of shaping a story is about, you know, finding where the characters should go. And if the first act is about them meeting, the second act is about them dealing with college life and their own life priorities. One big part of the process of writing this movie and shaping it is to also have a conclusion or have a continuation. And so very much there were a lot of ideas that we had about where this movie could go. I can't spoil anything, of course.
That's
Can't
okay.
share, but you will discover that there was a lot more to come. And we really hope that all of you fall in love with the characters and the new scenarios, the new characters that are introduced, as well as open the doors for so many more possibilities. You know, my dream after, honestly, I'll be completely transparent. After the first movie, I'm like, and I did have discussions with the producers. What if this opened up into a whole Sidelined universe?
Wow.
And
We'll take it.
that would be something I would love to help shape and continue. And I know that I can speak for the studio. It is very much in our minds and our hearts to continue the story if we succeed. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Well, I think that is the most perfect way to end that episode with that good news. This movie was such a tribute to figuring life out in your early 20s and your first love and navigating life and trying to make decisions for you and for those around you. And it was incredible. And thank you so much for coming on here and creating that incredible world. And I wish you the best of luck in this potential Sidelined universe. So thank you, Justin.
Well, thank you so much.
Amazing.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to Off the Shelf, and we will see you next Thursday.